Hello, friends, and welcome back. I'm Lisa, and I have an essay for you on a documentary film about sorority culture by filmmaker Rachel Fleet called Bama Rush. Right off the bat, I'll tell you that I loved the film, and I'm apparently in the vast minority of viewers. So I want to tell you why I think it's a great film, talk about the themes and characters and why their stories are important, and discuss the negative reaction to the film. Before we get into that, let's get started with Chapter 1, What are sororities and what is Rush? Sororities are groups of women that live and socialize together at college. Rush is the week-long process, typically at the beginning of freshman year, when girls choose which sorority they want to be a part of, and sororities decide which girls will be invited. Of course, those choices don't always align, which leads to some broken hearts. Again, Rush happens over the course of just 1 week. Incoming freshman girls meet with hundreds of other girls in an attempt to find their best friends for the next 4 years and maybe life. It's a contrived and inorganic way to make social connections because the idea that you can establish deep, meaningful sisterhood in a few meetings is dubious at best. Instead, the rush process for many is a stressful game of musical chairs. Sure, it might all work out, but it's a gamble. Stress is guaranteed, and the potential for heartbreak is high. And yet the women who go through it convince themselves otherwise. Girls rushing sororities can expect to spend thousands of dollars on this process. During their first year, expenses can run up to $10,000, and that's in addition to college tuition and fees. Now that we have the basics down, let's talk about the film, beginning with the characters. Chapter 2, Let's Meet the Girls. There are 4 main characters in this film, all young women aspiring to join sororities at the University of Alabama. While each is her own unique person, they all share the common trait of dealing with trauma and mental health issues, and they all seek sisterhood as a way of coping with or overcoming their struggles. First is Shelby, a pageant queen from Illinois. She is bubbly with a million-watt smile. She is adopted and as a result suffers from anxiety, which she describes as really bad. She also says she feels super lonely at home and deals with depression and trust issues. She says, "I get nervous that people are going to leave me." Next, we meet Isabel from California, who is eager to establish friendships at college. She says, "It's been really hard to find a sense of self-worth because I don't really know who I am." She also says, "I found it hard to find someone who would love me no matter what, and no one knows me fully and loves me fully." She is a sexual assault survivor and a bullying victim. She has suffered from eating disorders, body dysmorphia, and anxiety. Then there is Haley Holiday. Like Shelby, she is a pageant queen, but she has an eating disorder. She counts calories and body checks. She says, "I just want to be loved by everybody." She has childhood trauma from her dad dying and from moving out at age 16, and she has been roofied multiple times. Finally, Michaela. She begins the film as Haley's close friend. They bond over their childhood traumas. But later, Michaela is unable to maintain the friendship. She is extremely quiet and shy, saying, "I feel like a black sheep." She also has body dysmorphia and says, "I need to be tiny. I see myself as fat." And as a mixed-race young woman, she feels that she doesn't fit in fully in either the white or black social groups. Alabama in 2023 is still struggling to overcome racial segregation and racism. But these 4 girls are not the only important characters in the film. 3 more characters really shape the meaning and the main theme of the film, which is the importance of social acceptance. Trisha is a rush consultant in Atlanta, to whom Michaela makes the 3-hour road trip several times on her journey as a sorority hopeful. But Trisha's backstory is, in the context of this contrived world, devastating. As she writes on her website, "After a grueling week of trial by fire, I mismatched and did not get into a sorority. To say I was devastated is an understatement, and I will never forget midnight. While so many girls were squealing in excitement all the way to their new chapter rooms, I spent the night hysterically crying into the arms of a friend's mom who was there for her daughter's big night." By working as a rush consultant, Trisha has dedicated her life to coping with and resolving her own traumatic social rejection. In helping guide young women as they navigate the rush process, she hopes to heal herself vicariously through them. Sloan is another rush consultant who coaches Isabel. She too had a suboptimal experience during her school's sorority rush and has dedicated herself to guiding young women in this process. And last but certainly not least is Rachel, the filmmaker, who inserts herself into her film. A lot of viewers felt her presence was jarring and nonsensical. She wasn't in a sorority. She never went through rush. She's observing this process as an outsider. I agree that at first it seemed like a bold choice for her to include herself in the film, but as she wove her own story through the documentary, it really tied together the theme of everyday trauma that is so universal to young women growing up and ended up being a very powerful element of the film. Rachel experienced a condition called alopecia from a young age, which causes baldness. Feeling self-conscious, she became hyper-focused on fitting in and blending in. She wore wigs to hide her condition from her peers. When a classmate figured out that Rachel was different and confronted her, she was traumatized. Rachel's story reinforces the theme that social acceptance is so crucial and yet so fraught and anxiety-provoking in young women. And Rachel, Sloan, and Trisha, the older adults in this film, show how difficult it can be to let go of our unresolved traumas regarding social rejection. We can carry these traumas and relive them through the length of our lives. Social acceptance is just one theme of this film, and we'll talk more about that idea later. For now, let's look at some of the other themes of the film. Chapter 3, The Surface and What's Below. One major theme is the difference between what's on the surface of something and what's lurking below. The film introduces us to young women who are cheerful, sociable, and optimistic on the surface, but their bubbly facades hide significant trauma and a desperate need to belong. Wearing the masks they do, hiding their pain, and showing the world a curated picture is ultimately the performance of womanhood. In discussions of social media, the film portrays women photoshopping pictures for Instagram and being nearly obsessed with the superficial, their looks and outfits. They are performing rather than being, and their smiles and cheery outfit of the day videos mask eating disorders and deep insecurities. That disconnect between the surface and what's really going on is echoed in the sororities themselves. On the surface, you have a group of smiling, cheering women claiming to be supportive sisters for life. Deeper down, there are toxic qualities and actually cult-like qualities to these groups. The very reason for sororities existing today is quite dark. It's summed up by Elizabeth Bronwyn Boyd, author of Southern Beauty, who says, "Rush is a social stratification ritual. Stratification in the sense of organizing people into tiers of power, of status, of prestige. It's a proving ground of competitive femininity and the contemporary performance of the Southern belle." Sororities are sold as sisterhoods, and the historical origin of sororities were as sisterhoods, where women supported each other emotionally and practically in the overtly sexist environments of colleges 100 plus years ago. At that time, some male leaders argued that women didn't belong in college, as education would hinder a woman's ability to fulfill her natural role of wife and mother. Some even believed that studying diverted blood flow away from the ovaries, making them shrivel up. In that environment, supportive groups of women were crucial and beneficial. Today, sororities function in a different way. Now they are ultimately a way to rank women as potential partners for males and fraternities, categorizing women by levels of desirability, which takes out the guesswork for males seeking suitable partners. Certain fraternities mix with certain sororities on their social calendars throughout the school year. The rush process organizes girls in tiers from hottest to least hot, creating a shortcut for the socially elite boys to know with whom to mix. Another kind of group that has the duality of a surface appearance not matching the true nature of the group is a cult. Cults typically appear as self-help or spiritual groups, but deeper down they are about mind control, brainwashing, and sexual coercion. Chapter 4. Is a sorority a type of cult? Although the film touches on some of the negative aspects of sororities, it doesn't take an overtly negative stance. It's neutral, simply seeking to understand why these organizations exist and why girls join them. It doesn't mention hazing rituals or toxic big little relationships where older sorority members treat new recruits as personal slaves. A cute symbol of sorority sistership to this day is the paddle, which is really cringy since paddles originated as tools for corporal punishment and were commonly used by slave owners. Despite these omissions, the film does subtly weave in many representations of the cultishness of sororities. One cult-like quality is the idea of uniformity. Girls give up their individual identities to become members of the group. As Trisha says, you have to blend in without sticking out. You don't have to be like everybody else, but you just need to not stick out. In the extreme, we see girls dressed in matching uniform-like outfits with similar hair and makeup performing cheers. The loss of individual identity in favor of group membership is echoed by one sorority member, Rianne, who says, "Something that's ingrained in us early on is that, yeah, you're a person, but you're a Sigma Kappa first. You're a woman, but you're a Sigma Kappa woman first." Another cult quality is the extreme number of rules that govern life in a sorority. The smallest details of a member's day are governed by the sorority's rules. Sororities have stifling and lengthy guidelines called codes of conduct. Examples of rules include not leaving your bedroom with wet hair, or without applying makeup, or without wearing clothes that the sorority deems appropriate. As they would be in a cult, these rules are arbitrarily applied. Some women get in trouble for breaking minor rules, while other women are not punished for breaking more significant rules. Haley is kicked out of a sorority for wearing the wrong sticker on her shirt. Meanwhile, other girls spend the night at fraternity houses, a huge no-no, but remain unpunished. The arbitrary application of rules makes examples of people and provokes anxiety in members. And that anxiety actually causes them to be more loyal and bonded to the group. This is the veering bus theory of cults, which is that in situations where the cult's leadership acts erratically and harmfully, like a bus driver zigzagging a bus, those who are less loyal will be thrown off the bus, while those who are more loyal will grip harder to stay on. That is, they will convince themselves that the abuse they are suffering is normal or for a higher cause. One way loyalty is demonstrated is by girls tattling or narking on each other, and this breeds secretiveness and extreme stress. So it's interesting that some girls seek out sororities as a way to cope with anxiety, when a sorority itself can be a major source of anxiety. And the rush process itself is physically demanding, exhausting, mentally and emotionally overwhelming. It's draining and disorienting. Don't forget that it happens when girls are away at college in a new, unfamiliar environment, and they may be away from home for the first time in their lives. These are, once again, all parallel to the tactics that cults use to recruit members, enhance loyalty, and brainwash people. Chapter 5, Racism. Another theme woven throughout the film is racism. Racism is not only a type of systemic injustice, it's also a form of in-group, out-group designation, with grave consequences for victims. At the University of Alabama, sorority segregation was officially banned only in 2013 after much protesting by students, but essentially remains in an unofficial capacity. There are two separate governing bodies for sororities at the school. The Pan-Hellenic Association, though no longer exclusively white, remains essentially white, and the National Pan-Hellenic Council, also known as the Divine Nine, which includes the historically Black Greek organizations. One interviewee in the film discusses the trauma of seeing a cross burning in front of her Black sorority house. And accepted symbols of racism, like the Confederate flag, still exist throughout Alabama, even in official usage, like in the state coat of arms. The idea that the girls within the group all need to look like carbon copies of each other is naturally going to exclude women of color from majority or exclusively white groups. And mixed race women like Michaela and Rianne can have a difficult time as well, as they don't necessarily feel that they fit perfectly into either space. Chapter 6. The internet is toxic. The film has an unusual quality to it. Partway into the film, it becomes meta-cinematic, that is, self-referential. It acknowledges itself as a film and it breaks the fourth wall, telling us that it knows of its existence. Rachel, the director, speaks about the experience of making the film and the challenges the filmmakers face as they battle rumors about the production. So the film becomes a record of the reaction to the film as it is anticipated, and the plot begins to revolve around the film's production behind the scenes. It doesn't get any more meta than that. And it makes for fascinating and suspenseful filmmaking. The film does an excellent job of showing the impact of the internet rumor mill and the way that anonymous strangers fuel a collective addiction to drama. And ultimately, gossip becomes yet another unhealthy tool used to strengthen social bonds whilst ostracizing outgroup individuals. Gossip even gains a level of gravitas as legacy media like the New York Times picks up stories off of social media and runs rumors as facts. As the rumors increase, Rachel begins to fear for her safety, and this leads to perhaps the most powerful and poignant moment of the film, when Rachel, after years of living proudly as a bald woman, has to put on a wig to protect her identity and safety while filming the documentary on campus. The symbolism is incredible there. Throughout her childhood and young adulthood, Rachel succumbed to the pressure to fit in, and only as an adult gained the strength to be her bald self and not hide who she is. But now, once again, she puts the wig on, showing the power that social acceptance has in our lives. It's actually equated with personal safety and survival. Her individuality and individual expression is quashed in favor of group conformity. Chapter 7. Social acceptance is a basic need. In the mid-20th century, psychologist Abraham Maslow proposed a theory about human needs, creating a hierarchy to describe our needs from most basic and essential at the bottom, things like air, food, shelter, and sleep, to those we need for ultimate psychological fulfillment at the top. He placed social acceptance, love, belonging, and friendship in the middle. I don't think Maslow got this right, and this hierarchy needs to be reorganized. Social acceptance should be placed at the bottom, perhaps right above air and water. Humans evolved to live in a tribal setting, and it's only recently in human history that our living arrangements have changed. But our DNA hasn't adapted, and so we still have the same needs as tribal humans. In a tribal setting, if you are ostracized and rejected from the group, you will not survive more than a few days at most. In a harsh environment, if you are kicked out of a shelter, you could be dead within hours. You need the group in order to secure shelter, food, and clothing. Group membership is literally a matter of life and death. Historically, social rejection was a death sentence, and so it taps into people's most primal and basic survival instincts. People will prioritize group acceptance over their own well-being, whether that group is a cult, a religious sect, or a sorority or fraternity. This is how people end up participating in dangerous and humiliating hazing rituals in order to join a group. This is how they end up acting against their own moral values. They accept degrading treatment and strict rules micromanaging their lives. They perform unconscionable acts to appease the group. They stifle their individual expression and hide their personal opinions, because the alternative is not seen as freedom or independence, but social death. Chapter 8. What the film is and what it is not. Why I loved it and why other people didn't. Much of the negative response to the film came in the form of review bombing by people who didn't even watch it, which is a display of that tribalism we were just talking about. But for some people who genuinely didn't like the film, their disappointment was a result of unfulfilled expectations. The film was marketed as an expose, and the drama surrounding the production of the film and the rumors on social media hyped the film up as a sensational takedown of sorority culture. So if you were watching the film expecting to learn the dark secrets of sororities, you would be disappointed. I personally went into the film with zero expectations, not knowing anything about it or about Rush. I don't use social media or TikTok, so I had no idea about any of this stuff. And I found a film that is a quiet, woman-centered, sensitive documentary, and that's why I loved it. It paints gentle, nuanced, humanizing portraits of young women. I loved the diary quality to it, the beautiful cinematography, the lyrical and dreamy storytelling, and the way it humanizes these young girls by allowing them to tell their own stories in their own voices. We get to see these portrayals of women that are complicated and vulnerable, and that is very rare and very valuable. But maybe that was also something people didn't like about it, because it is so rare to see young women humanized in this way. Maybe that makes some viewers uncomfortable. People aren't used to seeing beneath a one-dimensional, fluffy, bubbly, cheerful exterior to some of the painful and ugly truths that live beneath. But even if it makes us uncomfortable, it's vitally important to listen to these young women and the struggles they are going through. This is a film about fitting in and finding yourself and finding your identity vis-a-vis a group of your peers and craving acceptance in a world where, as women, we are often alienated from one another. And these are universal experiences that all women can relate to. By treating the film subject in such a delicate, sensitive, kind way, the filmmaker invites women to look at their own lives in that same manner. She invites us to recognize that the social struggles we've gone through are universal and normal, and to treat ourselves with the same kindness that we instinctively feel towards her subjects as they navigate life as young women. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to this essay. Whether you enjoyed the film or didn't like it, please feel free to leave me a comment either way. I look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care and be well. Bye.